Have you ever wondered what $120 million of family betrayal looks like? I'm Dilly's Vance. And 3 years ago, I gave up everything. I walked away from my dream position at MIT. Gave up my entire life. To care for my father, David, after his massive stroke. While my sister, Sophia, was busy building her brand in Milan. I was the one learning to manage his complex medication schedules. I was the one handling panicked late-night board member calls from his hospital room. For 3 years, I ran Vance Analytics in total silence. Right from his bedside. Drop a comment, and let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. 8 weeks ago, David recovered. His speech was clear. His strength returned. And just like that, Sophia flew home, arriving with a dozen suitcases and a perfect Milan tan. Yesterday, he called the family meeting. He sat at the head of the dining table, looking just as powerful as he had before the stroke. Sophia was on his right, her phone angled perfectly for a subtle selfie. I was on his left. He announced he was stepping down. Effective immediately. He said Vance Analytics needed fresh leadership and modern branding. Then he looked at my sister, the 28-year-old influencer, and handed her the entire company. The legacy. The $120 million portfolio. My reward. $75,000. A check and a pat on the head. He looked right at me, his eyes cold, and said, "You've never understood business. Dillies. Your AI ethics. It's just nonsensical theory. It's time to let Sophia handle the real world." And as I watched Sophia pose for a photo, pretending to sign a document, it all clicked. I finally understood. My father doesn't value competence. He values a reflection. Sophia, just like him, is an extrovert. She's flashy. She knows how to sell an image. How to be seen. She was the golden child, destined to inherit the glory. And me, I was the scapegoat. The quiet, invisible one, who was just useful. I was the one responsible for the hard, thankless support work. Like keeping him alive and running his entire company while he recovered. He thought I was just the quiet, background support. But he forgot something. I remember a moment. 3 weeks after the stroke. It was 2 a.m. The hospital room was dark, lit only by the blue glow of the monitors. I was running Q4 analysis on his laptop, trying to save a client account he'd almost lost. He was delirious, his hand reaching out. He grabbed mine. I thought he'd finally recognized me. And then he whispered, "Sophia. My darling girl. Thank you." My heart shattered. He didn't even know who was saving him. But I didn't cry. I sat there for a long time, the sound of the breathing machine filling the silence. Then, very slowly, I closed his financial models and opened a new browser tab. In the dim light of that hospital room, I quietly registered a new domain, dvancelogic.com. That was the moment I knew I had to save myself. "I'll need all your office keys, the house keys, and a list of all your passwords by tomorrow morning," Sophia said, not even looking up from her phone. She was already redecorating my father's office in her head. "Dad wants a clean transition." A clean transition. After 3 years of my life, I was being transitioned out in less than 24 hours. I just nodded, walked out of the house I'd saved, and drove back to my old apartment, the one I'd barely lived in for 3 years. It smelled like dust and silence. I didn't pack. I didn't cry. I just sat at my cheap desk, the one I'd bought right out of college, and opened my laptop. I ignored the main work email, the one that was probably already filling up with alerts of my access being revoked. Instead, I opened my personal one, the one attached to Vance Logic. My heart was pounding. I'd been waiting for a response for 2 weeks. But after yesterday's meeting, I assumed it was all over. And there it was. One new email. My hands were shaking. The subject line read, "Project Genesis Contract Awarded." I clicked it. "Dear Ms. Vance. My name is Michael Stratton, CEO of Biogen. After an exhaustive review of dozens of proposals for our new therapeutic AI platform, the board has unanimously voted to select your ethics and governance model. We were Frankly, blown away. Your approach is the future. The initial $60 million contract is attached. We are eager to begin immediately. Welcome aboard. $60 million. I read the email again. And a third time. This wasn't just any contract. This was Project Genesis. This was the white whale my father and Vance Analytics had been chasing for 2 solid years. I'd sat in on the meetings. I'd heard the presentations. They'd submitted their old, outdated models and had been politely rejected every time. They had been trying to win this for 2 years. I had been working on my proposal in secret, between managing my father's blood pressure medication and physical therapy appointments, for 6 months. And I had won. Michael Stratton. Biogen. They didn't know I was David Vance's daughter. My proposal had been submitted under my company name, D. Vance Logic. My name was on it. But they hadn't made the connection. They hadn't chosen me because I was a Vance. They had chosen me despite it. They had chosen my work. My nonsensical theory. I looked at the check for $75,000 my father had left on the table. Then I looked at the $60 million contract glowing on my screen. The game had just changed. The next morning, I was in an office on the 40th floor, overlooking the Austin skyline. My office. Or at least, the one I was about to sign a lease on. Across the glass desk sat Jessica Riley. Melavier. She was sharp, fast, and had zero tolerance for nonsense. I'd hired her 2 years ago, when I set up the Vance Logic LLC. Just in case. It turns out just in case had finally arrived. She scanned the severance and disinheritance papers my father had forced me to sign. Her expression was perfectly neutral. David really crossed every T, she said, tapping the page. He's got you signing away all claims. All future inheritance. All rights. And, of course, the ironclad 5-year non-compete. I nodded, my stomach tightening. That's why I'm here. The Biogen contract. Can I even accept it? Jessica stopped tapping. She looked up from the papers and a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. Oh, Dillies. David made a fatal mistake. I leaned forward. What? He's a good, old-school CEO, she said. And in his arrogance, he used the standard employee exit template. This non-compete is airtight. For employees of Vance Analytics. She slid the paper across the desk and pointed to a single clause. The moment he had you sign this, she continued. The one that accepted the $75,000 as a final payout. The one that formally disinherited you from the family trust. He legally terminated your status. You are not an employee. You are not a partner. You are a disaffiliated third party. She leaned back, her smile widening. As of yesterday, according to his own paperwork, you are a complete stranger. The non-compete is worthless. You're free. I felt the air rush back into my lungs. Free. But wait, Jessica said, holding up a finger. Her smile vanished. It gets worse. Or for our purposes, better. She turned to her computer. I ran a check on the IP patent database this morning. Just on a hunch. Your father, or rather, Vance Analytics, filed an expedited patent application 3 days ago. She spun the monitor around. It's for a novel predictive analysis model for ethical AI governance. Does that sound familiar? My blood ran cold. It was my work. It was the core code of the Genesis project. The model I had built, line by line, in the quiet of his hospital room while he slept. The work he had called nonsensical theory. He wasn't just disowning me. He was robbing me. He wasn't just pushing me out of the family. He was trying to steal my mind. My work. My future. And pass it off as his own. Jessica looked at me. Her eyes like steel. This just changed. Dillies. This is no longer a family dispute. This is intellectual property theft. This is fraud. The Austin Tech Symposium is the biggest event of the year. It's where deals are made. Legacies are cemented. And new stars are born. This year, the keynote was The New Era of Vance Analytics, hosted by my father, David, and the brilliant new CEO, Sophia. I was there. Too. Not in the audience. I was backstage. In the VIP lounge. Sipping coffee with Michael Stratton, the CEO of Biogen. You ready for this? Dillies, he asked, checking his watch. I'm ready, I said. My voice was steady. We watched on the monitor as my father took the stage to thunderous applause. He was in his element. Radiating power. Legacy, he boomed, is not just about what we build. It's about what we pass on. Today, Vance Analytics begins its new chapter. He was about to introduce Sophia. He was about to present my stolen model as his new discovery. Right on time, Michael said. He nodded to his PR team in the back. On stage, my father was just hitting his crescendo, a future built on a revolutionary new. When a young assistant ran onto the stage, handing him a tablet, my father frowned, annoyed by the interruption. He glanced down at the screen. We watched in high definition as the blood drained from his face. His confident smile froze, then collapsed. He knew, at that exact second, the Biogen press release had gone live, hitting the inbox of every journalist, investor, and attendee in that room. Before my father could say a word, Michael Stratton walked past him and took the center microphone. Thank you, David, Michael said, his voice cutting through the confused silence. A powerful sentiment. Vance Analytics has a long and storied history. He paused, letting the history part hang in the air. But the future of AI, he continued, isn't about repeating the past. It's about ethics. It's about transparency. It's about a new logic. That's why Biogen is proud to announce our $60 million investment in the platform that will define that future. He turned and smiled at me. Please welcome to the stage, the founder and chief architect of Vance Logic, Dillies Vance. I walked out. I didn't look at my father. I didn't look at Sophia, who looked like she'd seen a ghost. I walked to the center podium, plugged in my laptop, and my presentation filled the massive screen. Good afternoon, I said, my voice clear and strong. My name is Dillies Vance, and my nonsensical theory is about to change everything. For 10 minutes, I showed them my work, my models, my platform, the real one. Then, I got to the final slide. The power of this new model, I said, is that it can accurately stress test other platforms for efficacy and bias. It can see what's obsolete. For example, I clicked. A new chart appeared. I ran an analysis on the Vance proprietary model, the one my father built his legacy on. The room was dead silent. My analysis shows, I said, pointing to the data, that the Vance model has been scientifically obsolete and functionally inaccurate for the last 5 years. I let that sink in. I hadn't just taken his future. I had just, in public, invalidated his entire past. The room was in chaos. Hands shot up. The journalists were practically climbing over each other. My father was still standing on the side of the stage, white as a sheet, looking at my final slide. A reporter from TechCrunch got the first question. Ms. Vance, Ms. Nelfer. Vance, are you saying, on the record, that Vance Analytics has been operating on a fraudulent model? Before I could answer, Michael Stratton stepped in. What, Ms. Vance is saying is that Vance Logic's model is provably superior, which is why we've partnered with her. Another reporter turned, aiming her microphone at my sister, who had been silent, frozen at her father's side. Sophia Vance, as the new CEO. What's your response to losing the Biogen contract? How does Vance Analytics plan to recover? I watched Sophia. This was her moment. Her first test as the new CEO. She visibly pulled herself together, put on her bright PR smile, and stepped toward the microphone. Thank you for that question, she said, her voice dripping with fake confidence. We at Vance Analytics are so excited for the future of Biogen. In fact, we've been in talks with them for months, and we are thrilled to be providing our social media analysis for their new vaccine project. Silence. Not just quiet. It was a complete, heavy, vacuum-sucking silence. The reporter who asked the question just blinked. Michael Stratton, who had been smiling, slowly turned his head. His expression was now lethally cold. He picked up the nearest microphone. Biogen, he said, his voice dangerously calm, is a gene therapy company. He paused, letting every word land. We don't make vaccines, and we have absolutely nothing to do with social media. The sound that filled the room wasn't a gasp. It was an explosion of whispers, of laughter, of journalists frantically typing. It was the sound of a 60-year legacy being completely and publicly dismantled by a single ignorant sentence. It was over. The fallout was faster than even Jessica had predicted. Within 48 hours, Biogen filed a massive lawsuit for intellectual property theft and fraud. That was followed by 3 investor lawsuits, citing David's public presentation of a scientifically obsolete model. Vance Analytics was finished. The board convened an emergency meeting. David and Sophia were forced to resign. That was 6 months ago. Today, my office at Vance Logic overlooks the entire Austin skyline. We have 15 employees. 3 of them are the best data engineers from Vance Analytics, the ones my father had overlooked for years. They'd all emailed me the day after the symposium. My father called me last week. His voice wasn't the CEO boom. It was small and cracked. He wanted to talk. He wanted reconciliation. I kept my voice calm, level. I told him I'd be open to a conversation. After he'd spent 6 months in consistent therapy for narcissistic personality disorder, he hung up. I looked up from my desk at the award hanging on my wall. The Ethics and Innovation Award I'd won just before his stroke. The one I'd found in a storage closet after Sophia moved in. The one my father had taken down to make room for her Influencer of the Year plaque. It was the first thing I hung in this new office. My assistant buzzed. Dillies. I've got that final intern application you asked for. I pulled it up. The woman was brilliant. Top of her class. Her cover letter was passionate, almost angry. She wrote that she was desperate to leave her current firm, an old guard tech company, because they only valued the image of innovation, not the actual content. I smiled. I hit reply and typed, "Welcome to Vance Logic. Can you start on Monday? My story is proof. Your value is never determined by those who refuse to see it. It's built in the quiet, by the work you do when no one is watching. Subscribe and share this story if you believe in the power of building your own legacy